Hello all, this is Freddie Williams, working on some commissioned art, and I figured I'd multitask and get some Q&A in as well. This question I've been asked a million times, which is how I broke in or how I got my start. My goal has always been to draw for comic books, and so even back whenever I was like in high school, whenever I was 14 years old and stuff, I was looking for a way to either, to draw comic books of my own creation or to draw Superman or X-Men. I feel like the journey started even whenever I was a kid, as far as the interest, and then just looking for a way to break in myself. And there's a lot of like false leads along the way, where you're trying to get something going, and I'm sure many of you have experienced or are experiencing this now, where you're trying to get something going, and then something falls apart, somebody pulls out and they can't do it anymore, or you lose contact with the people that you're going to do it with, whatever. I'm not going to get into all of those, but the way that I broke in with DC specifically is at the San Diego Con of 2005. I had a portfolio. It was about 15 pages worth. Almost all of it was sequentials. There was like 2 or 3 pinup / cover pages, but the rest was sequential work, because that's what they want to see. And at this point I had drawn maybe the equivalent of about 7 comics total. There was 3, I won't get into all those because some of them are so bad I don't want anyone finding them. But most recently I had done a series of one-shots for a couple of independent companies, and most of those are now defunct. One called Cellar Door, one called Speakeasy, one called Marcosia. Marcosia might still be around. I'm not 100%. In any case, I'm saying that because I, at this point, knew at least somewhat what I was doing sequential art-wise. So my portfolio was serviceable. It was not embarrassing. The specifics of how I submitted my work was the way that portfolio reviews work at Marvel and DC now is that instead of just waiting in a long line to get a review, at big conventions, Marvel and DC both have like these big displays that they have like a slot in the wall of the display where you slip your portfolio in. And I've, in years since, I've seen what that slot leads to at the DC booth. It leads to a big trash can where it collects all the portfolios that are deposited there throughout the day. And then after the show is over, they have like a group of 5 or 6 editors or art directors leaf through all of those portfolios and pull out all the promising ones. Maybe 5 or 6 of them or something. And so for me, I dropped off my portfolio on a Friday, came in on Saturday morning, saw my name was on the list of people to review for DC, and I was ecstatic. I was out of my mind with excitement. So I showed up incredibly early to get, I wanted to definitely be on time, especially because at the San Diego Con, it takes forever to walk anywhere. I interviewed with art director at the time named Richard Bruning. He no longer works at DC. Although I had submitted small photocopies of my portfolio, my full portfolio was like digital art that I had done and then printed out at 11 by 17 and put in my portfolio. And I was a little nervous that whoever I reviewed with would not like an artist doing digital art. They might see it as a cheat or as a shortcut or be kind of confused by it and kind of react negatively to it. So I did not mention it, I did not volunteer it, and was not sure if it came up how I'd react. We got about halfway through the portfolio. Richard was very positive with my artwork and how that he liked it, and we got to a brick wall, and I had created a building face path in Photoshop. So I'd use a path like I describe in the how-to book to create this intricate brick texture. And Richard said something like, "Boy, that must have taken a long time to draw," or something like that. And the implication was, of course, it was implying that I had drawn it, and I, with a little bit of nervousness, I said, "Well, actually, that's digital. All this is digital." And he reacted with pleasant surprise. He was like, "Oh, really?" and with excitement even, and flipped all the way to the beginning of my portfolio and spent even an extra amount of time going through it and noting that he liked how I did how I created the digital art because it looked organic, and he was pointing out, this looks really hand-drawn, or now that you've mentioned it, I can tell that this is digital and stuff. it was a good experience, and I was relieved. And he had made some mentions of some of the criticisms that he gave me was that some of my female characters were a little too generic, like they looked, their faces were the same shape, they had the same basic hairstyles and stuff. He made some other comments I can't remember off the top of my head, but in any case, I took note of those. At the end of the review, he gave me his business card that had his email on it, and one of the things that we had talked about whenever, discussing how to create artwork digitally was I had described how I was taking those chest symbol paths, so imagine Superman's S, and molding that in Photoshop to look like it had volume, to give it some depth, some roundness to it. Richard had said, "Oh, you see, we've tried that," and I think when he said "we've," I think he meant at DC. We've tried that, but it always just looks stuck on. So as soon as I got back home from the convention, I think it was in the last week of July or early August, something like that. Like within 12 hours of me returning home, I created like an example page, like a 4-panel grid that showed Superman at different angles. Three of the angles were, focusing on his chest at different angles to show the different volumes, and then the last panel was his cape, and so it showed the S path symbol undulating with the curved fabric. I emailed that to him, just basically following up and showing him that I remembered that to remind him of who I was, and B, that I knew what I was talking about, basically, that I could deliver what I had said. And you don't know how long, if ever, that sort of thing is going to pay off, meaning I did not know that I was going to get work from DC. So I wanted to stay in Richard's face. I wanted to pleasantly keep reminding him that I existed. So I was producing at the time anywhere from 4 to 6 pages a week, even though I had a full-time job at Hallmark Cards as what they called was a PA, a production artist, but we did a lot of design work and stuff. It's kind of a weird title. It was a weird all-inclusive job, but in any case, I was creating a lot of work, and I wanted to impress upon Richard, wanted to stay in his face, I wanted to impress upon him that I was fast and still learning, and I remembered his criticism. So, at the time I was doing some work for Image. I was drawing some backup stories, like these backup flashback stories for Jay Faber for a book called Noble Causes. And in Noble Causes there was a couple of female characters that looked distinctively different. I made sure that I kept Richard's criticism in mind whenever I was drawing those pages, and then whenever I would email, at the end of each week, I would email Richard all the pages that I had drawn that week, and with a really short email that basically said, I was reminding him who I was, wanted to make sure I didn't kind of fade from the front of his mind, so to speak, and look at these pages, and in these pages I try to make more specific looking females, and I addressed whatever other concerns he had. And it was so that I showed that I had follow-up and stick-to-itiveness and consistency and longevity and whatever other sort of positive spin that I could bring to this. Also showing that I was trying to progress and addressing all of the concerns, the legitimate criticisms he had given me. And oftentimes I would not get a reply from Richard, by the way. Sometimes I would get something back that said, hey, that looks good, or cool, or something, but there were times that I wouldn't receive any reply back from Richard, but I didn't let that stop me. I just kept with it, kept at it. And this was work I had to do anyway. I mean, I might as well send it to him and try to remind him of who I am, and show him that I was working hard. So by about mid-October, I got a phone call from Peter Tomasi, who at the time was a senior editor at DC. But currently he's a writer. He writes Batman and Robin and some several Green Lanterns things. He asked if I would be interested in working on finishing up Seven Soldiers, Mr. Miracle. I was like, oh geez, yeah, I guess so. No, I was really excited. I had about 3 days, because this was on a Friday that he called me. I had about 3 days until I would start getting, like, he was going to send me a package, and so his assistant editor put together the package and send it to me. And so over that weekend, from Friday, whenever he called me, to the following Tuesday or whatever that I got the package, I was on cloud 9, so to speak. So it's pretty excited. But that was basically, that's how I got my start. I also worked for, that was October of 2005, and for the next year, I worked monthly for DC, eventually doing a couple fill-in issues of like Aquaman and whatever else they needed me to do, and then they offered me art duties on Robin. And so at that time I was working at Hallmark Cards still, and basically I was working 2 full-time jobs and had virtually no sleep. It was very stressful, but it was worth it. And within a year of me working for DC, they offered me an exclusive, so that was October of 2006, and that exclusive lasted for another 6 years. I just got out of my exclusive October of 2012. So, and I'm still working for DC, I'm still doing work for them, I'm just not exclusive to them. So I'm doing covers for IDW, doing some work for Dark Horse. I would love to work for, do work for Marvel, for every single company. There's a lot of properties out there that I'm really interested in. So, but that summarizes how I got in to working professional, as a comic book artist.